Welcome back to another episode of the Auto Accident Attorneys Podcast, brought to you by the Auto Accident Attorneys Group, where our motto is simple: we take care of you. Today, I have attorney Alan Holcomb with us. In themes of taking care of us, Alan has just battled a proverbial Goliath, and I wanted him to come and discuss some of the trials and tribulations that he has experienced. And whether you're a consumer, this is typically consumer-based, but I think today's episode is something that other attorneys can actually get some benefit out of as well. So we're taking care of consumers and our fellow bar associates. Alan Holcomb joins us from Tor Herman Law. Alan, welcome. I know you're local to the office, so it wasn't too bad of a drive, I hope, right?
7 minutes.
Fantastic. Well, I do appreciate you coming and sitting down with me and recording today. I can't wait to get into your war stories from LA. But before we get there, I asked you a question before we started recording. Who is Alan Holcomb?
Yeah, that's a deep question, I think, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But I guess if you just wanted to do the stats, I'm a lawyer here. I live in Marietta, Georgia. I do catastrophic injury, wrongful death, product liability cases kind of all across the country. I'm from Mississippi originally and moved to Atlanta in like 1989. I grew up out in Snellville, Georgia, and went to Brookwood High School. Then went to UGA for undergrad and Emory for law school. I did do a stint in Miami for a couple of years. I did my first year of law school at Miami and then transferred to Emory. Married, have 2 kids. My wife grew up here in East Cobb. Most of my best friends from college grew up here in East Cobb, Marietta, Georgia. And so we moved here about 8 years ago. So yeah, that's basically kind of me in a nutshell, I guess.
Alan in a nutshell. Let me out of the nutshell. I didn't know your wife was a local East Cobb.
Oh yeah. She graduated from Walton, and most of my best friends that I went to college with, and then I was a defense lawyer for 10 years at Weinberg, Wheeler, Hudgens, Gunn and Dial.
We won't hold that against you.
No, yeah. I mean, I do a lot of videos myself that I end up having to delete so I don't make my friends angry. But most of them went to Walton also.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it got very kind of incestuous.
Walton produced some great kids, even outside of law.
Yeah, some of them.
I say that because I'm a Walton Raider myself, and I'm trying to put myself into that really good company.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Alan, let me ask you, you're in a very unique area of law, and I just realized that you've got a chip on the edge of your glass, so please don't drink from the far side.
Gotcha. We're all good.
We'll get rid of that later.
Yeah, all good.
You're in a very unique area of law. Your practice, you focus on, I don't want to butcher it because you do have single incidents, but you're really in like a mass, do I have it correct? You're in a mass tort world. You do big cases. How do I say that?
Yeah,
I do. Smart.
Yeah. So my entire career, when I was at Weinberg Wheeler kind of specialized then, and they still do now. They did all excess carrier defense, basically. So, before I had kids, I was working for a guy named Billy Gunn and Dave Dial, and these guys who were just going in and basically parachuting in to try the worst of the worst cases across the country. And they were mostly just, truck wrecks that killed 5 kids or something crazy like that. And then also product liability cases, some lung disease cases. And then I've kind of transferred that over. I jumped sides 7 years ago, and I've kind of straddled this world between mass torts and single events. So at my current firm, we're I'd say 80%, 85% a mass tort firm. I help run the single event department, which are mostly just all catastrophic injury, wrongful death cases. So stuff like I have a bunch of negligent security cases, medical malpractice, truck wrecks, a slip and fall if the injuries are bad enough. And then I kind of straddle that world and the mass tort world. I don't really work much on the day-to-day of the mass tort cases unless it's maybe for like a deposition or something like that. And then we have a trial team that consists of me and one of my partners, Jake Plattenberger. And once the mass tort case gets to the trial phase, then we kind of jump in, learn everything, and then dive in and try the case. So yeah, I'm straddling those two worlds at this firm.
And you're in a unique, I think when consumers especially think about an attorney, it's the local guy, someone that is near the courthouse. You're in another unique, you have another unique experience where your local counsel across, could I say continental U.S.?
Yeah, I've had cases in, I think, close to 30 states. I've tried cases, I think, in 12 or 13 at this point. I kind of lost count a little bit, and I don't mean that in a weird way. I literally just can't remember. I'm going, have dementia or something. But, yeah, it's a national practice, and a lot of that's because Weinberg Wheeler had a national practice. I think I've tried something like 3 or 4 times as many cases outside the state of Georgia as I have inside the state of Georgia. And then when I flipped sides, I was worried about getting referrals, right? Like I'm here in Atlanta. I knew some of the heavy hitters because I had paid them a lot of money through the years, but I really didn't know a lot of the guys in the community. So I had to market myself as kind of this national trial guy who would go anywhere at any time to get cases. And so it's just been kind of a natural progression. I'm trying to get a little bit more local now as I get older and my kids are, growing up and stuff like that. But I'm licensed in California, Ohio, Mississippi, Georgia. I've had cases in Idaho and New Hampshire and, you name it really.
So those jurisdictions where you're actually licensed, do you get licensed? Did you do it ahead of time, or are you going through that process when there's a case that's on?
So I did Mississippi because I'm originally from there, and at the time I think kind of the legal climate there, they were finishing up a bunch of tobacco cases, and I was kind of thinking that might go on for a while. Maybe I could try to get some of that business as a defense lawyer. California is pretty interesting. So in 2015, I tried a case in San Diego, California that actually involves the same lung disease case, or the same lung disease as the ConAgra case that you mentioned earlier. And there was really no defense at all. We were like the third defense lawyers who got put on the case. I basically moved to San Diego for 3 months, was taking the red eye back every week, and we really had no defense, but we out-lawyered the defense lawyer. He asked for like $75 million, I think, in economic damages.
The plaintiff side.
Yeah, the plaintiff did in closing, and we got a complete defense verdict.
Wow.
And after that, we kind of started getting flooded with some California work. And so I got to a point where I had so many pro hocs open, pro hoc vice, so that's where you get admitted for a single case, and you have to have a sponsoring local counsel. Well, I don't think California has like a hard number that you're allowed, but I guess somebody noticed, or maybe somebody complained that I had so many open, and so I got a letter from the California Supreme Court that said, basically, you're illegally practicing law here, and you need to come take the bar exam. So I went ahead and took the bar there, which was a pretty intense experience, actually.
So did you take it when it was still the 3-day?
It was a 3-day, but I was 5 years in, so I only had to take 2 of the 3 days.
Okay.
But it was, the way I describe it, I'm really surprised I passed it, to be honest with you. I had my wife was working full-time at the time. We had our son was going through like a 4-month sleep regression, so he was not sleeping at all. I had a full caseload. I really didn't have any time to study. And I tell people, the California bar is what they tell you the Georgia bar is going to be like, or like what you see in the movies. I went to the Georgia bar expecting chaos and high pressure, and there was some of that, but Georgia has like a 90-something% passage rate. Like it ain't that hard. And no offense to anybody who had to take it more than once. It just, the statistics show that it's not that difficult. Then I took the Mississippi bar, and I took it in the basement of a church, and I wrote it by hand. And they actually give you the scores there, and I got like 99%
on site.
Not on site, but you get them once you learn that you passed. They'll send you like your actual scores, which a lot of states won't do.
Yeah, like in California, you don't know how much you passed, but you just know that you passed.
Exactly. And then I get to California, and I took it in Santa Clara, right across the street from the 49ers stadium. And I want to say in the first 15 minutes I was there, 3 or 4 people are slamming their laptops, crying, running out of the room. There's 4,000 people in the same room, and that was one of the satellite places. It wasn't even supposed to be one of the large, locations where people were taking it. So I get to the third day, and when I show up on the third day, I realized there's a lot of people missing. Mm-hmm. And so it really became like a war of attrition. I'm like, if I just finish this, I have like a decent shot.
Yeah.
And then I just, Ohio, I had so many cases there at a certain point in my career that I just waived in. So I didn't have to take the exam there.
Amazing. I have my own California bar exam story. I don't remember the year now because I'm like you, I'm getting old and I feel like maybe I'm getting a little bit of dementia. But if you took the Ontario bar exam, the year that I took it, it was during summer. On day 3, I was the one that was wheeled out in a wheelchair before they let anyone else go.
Really?
Yeah, I was on stimulants to get me through day 3. I'd skipped lunch. Instead of having lunch, I think I had like 2 Red Bulls. So for the second session on day 3, I felt my upper lip getting really, really stiff. And then my fingertips started getting numb. So I stand up in my seat and I'm typing as I'm standing, so a proctor comes by to tell me to sit, and I was like with my stiff upper lip, like I can't.
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of that out there actually. And when you're talking about Ontario, you're talking about Ontario, California, like
California,
out past Pasadena and all that. Yeah.
But yeah, so everyone, I like to bash on Kim K as much as anyone else, but when everyone's bashing on Kim K for not passing the California bar exam, I was like, hey, you guys don't know.
Well, it's funny. Like I looked up after I passed. My wife was kind of like laughing when I passed. She's like, "Wait, you passed?" And I looked it up, and on some of these lists or surveys or whatever, they have it as like the 3rd hardest standardized test in the world. Mm-hmm. And so anytime my kids are like, "Oh, you don't know this, you don't know that," I'm like, "Hey, I passed the 3rd hardest test in the world, buddy.
Yeah.
Have you done that?" Yeah, so
the first hardest being looking your mom right in the eyes,
right.
After 18 holes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, let's not talk about that. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. I think we've got a good foundation. Hopefully our listeners, my number one listener, by the way, Alan, I know you've listened to the show. I don't know if you've caught on yet. It's my mother. She is my number one. Yeah. Hi, Mom. I love you so much. Thank you for listening. Right now, I already know when I get home and we're talking about this episode after she sees it, she's going to like, how come you can't be more like Alan?
No, she's one of the only ones.
So now that we have an understanding of really the battles that you see, I reached out to you unsolicited after I watched. Oh, by the way, we'll tag it in the body, but if you share your TikTok handle with us, because I saw the videos of ConAgra and your behind the scenes war room, and I was like, I want to hear more.
Yeah.
What's your TikTok handle?
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. We'll tag it here.
Yeah, I'll look it up. But the TikTok thing is new to me, and I just happened to make a video as I was leaving the Sky Club on the way to come home, literally 18 hours after the verdict, just talking to the camera, and all of a sudden I had like 350,000 views or something, and it kind of freaked me out. I was like, I don't know if that's a lot or a little, but it was a lot to me,
Yeah. Well, it's first off, your content is real, and it's content that I think I've got the best auto accident podcast out there for sure.
It's the only one I listen to.
But let's not joke ourselves. There are tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of us doing MBA cases. It's a much smaller pool doing what you're doing. So when you put that content out and you pull back the the curtain a little bit and show us behind the war room. You show us the details of what you've gone through, and as a traveling litigator, no less, it's really compelling content. So I was naturally drawn to it, and I really wanted to talk to you about it.
I appreciate that.
The specific case I wanted to talk about is ConAgra. And then I'll ask questions because of the fact that it's sort of active right now. You just tell me what you can and cannot discuss, and I'll just ask the questions.
Sure.
I believe it's a $25 million verdict, which is the largest verdict for a plaintiff that was not for a consumer, right? They've had it for employees, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
This is the first time a consumer plaintiff has ever gotten a verdict this large.
Correct.
ConAgra is the parent company of, is it PAM?
Right. So ConAgra is a major industrial food manufacturer. They own P.F. Chang's. They own
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they own the Blue Bonnet. They own brand. They own PAM. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, they're massive. So
you took on this massive conglomerate Goliath. Had anyone, you told us that when you were on the defense side, there was a plaintiff that had suffered the same disease, and they had they had asked for $75 million, and they got defensed. Thanks.
Yeah. That's a lot of the reason I'm a plaintiff's lawyer. We didn't do anything like unethical. It's just really good lawyering, but I didn't think we really had a defense, and the guy was very, very sick, and it should have been a major victory moment for me. And of course, I was happy to win because of the competitive nature of what we do, but that was kind of the beginning of the end of my defense stuff. I said, I just don't know that I really want to do this too much anymore.
Well, I'd say that it seems like you're bringing a little bit of equity back into the universe, right? Like you're swinging the pendulum to the other side.
Trying to, yeah.
Which I love, and I on behalf of all consumers and the oppressed, thanks for coming to the light side.
You're welcome.
Tell us, I don't want to butcher the setup. I'm just going to sit back. You tell me about how this case came to your doorstep, and then let's walk through where it is right now.
Yeah, and jump in anytime you want because it's, I'll try to be brief, but it has a long history. So there's a chemical that exists in nature, and it's called diacetyl or diacetyl. Nobody really knows how to pronounce it, including like food scientists. It's naturally occurring. It's in butter. It's in the bourbon that I have in my hand right now. It's in coffee. Naturally occurring. It's really no issue by itself. The problem is, as is the problem with most chemicals, is when companies get a hold of it. And so there was this low-fat or fat-free craze in the mid to late 80s, really going into the early 90s with, the Atkins diet and all this other stuff that was going on. And so everybody wanted a fat-free product. So what these major industrial food manufacturers did was they took the fat out of the stuff that we eat every day, and they would synthesize and increase the amount of diacetyl or diacetyl in the product so that it would still have that full, they call it like a cream flavor in your mouth. It's the reason why microwave popcorn still tasted really good in the 90s, even though they took all the fat of the butter out of it. And so, no harm, no foul for quite a while, although there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in the 90s that people didn't know about. But in the year 2001, there was a major outbreak of this very rare lung disease called bronchiolitis obliterans. Now, today, it's known as popcorn lung. And it's called popcorn lung because they first discovered it on a mass scale, at least, in these microwave popcorn facilities. So you had these workers in very rural areas, mostly in Missouri, Indiana, Ohio, a lot of ConAgra employees, who were essentially dumping this butter flavoring that had high levels of diacetyl into heated vats of oil. And diacetyl, like pretty much every chemical, at a certain point it becomes an irritant. So if you breathe it in, it's fine to eat all day long. You're good, no harm, no foul. But it's a lung irritant. And like I said, in 2001, they found basically a cluster of popcorn lung or bronchiolitis obliterans at a microwave popcorn manufacturing facility in Missouri, in a place called Jasper, Missouri. And then it started popping up in all, no pun intended, popping up in all of these other microwave popcorn plants from 2001 to, 2007 or something like that, which is how I got involved in the year 2010, 2011. So 2011, I'm at Weinberg Wheeler. I've been doing mostly like commercial evictions. They had a very kind of small commercial practice there. I actually wanted to be a construction lawyer, but they stuck me on the tort side, and I was not happy about it at first. But Billy Gunn, who means a lot to me and was a really great trial lawyer, kind of old school, warhorse type trial lawyer, walks down the hall and he says, "Hey, do you want to come help me try a case?" Which really meant like help me, carry my bags and, do stuff like that. In a place called Shawneetown, Illinois, for these popcorn lung cases. I had obviously never heard of it. I didn't have kids at the time. I wasn't married at the time. So I'm like, hell yeah, let's go. So we jump on a private jet, fly to Marion, Indiana, or where were we? Yeah, Marion, Illinois. And, it's settled 3 days in on a global scale. I think there were like 300 pending cases, but we took over the largest defendant in that litigation. Before we got involved, there had probably been, I had the stats in my head at one point, but I think there were like 10 to 15 verdicts against our client, International Flavors and Fragrances, for this particular lung disease for diacetyl. And then we ended up trying all of these cases that were going to trial were the workers, the people who were working in the ConAgra plant, the people who were, who were dumping large amounts of this chemical into heated vats of oil without respiratory protection. So in 2012, a consumer of microwave popcorn came down with bronchiolitis obliterans. Never worked in the plant. It made Good Morning America and all this stuff. His name's Wayne Watson. Actually, he came down with it in 2007, and then his trial was in 2012, and he got a $7 million verdict. And so a bunch of consumer microwave popcorn plaintiffs started showing up. So people who, it sounds weird, right? It sounds kind of implausible, but these are folks who wanted to go on low-fat diets, and so they would literally eat like 10 to 12 bags of microwave popcorn per day for years.
Jeez.
Yeah, it does sound strange, and that was one of the concerns with taking on this ConAgra case that we're going to discuss. But we went and tried one of those consumer cases in 2014 in the Northern District of Iowa. We got the ever-living shit kicked out of us every day by the plaintiff's lawyer. But we ended up getting a defense verdict in like an hour and 15 minutes.
Wow.
And after that, I kind of took over the role. I was a fourth-year lawyer at that point. I took over the role of national coordinating and trial counsel for this it was the largest flavoring manufacturer in the world at the time. And so I probably ended up handling, I don't even know, 500 of those cases over the next few years. And so, I flipped sides in 2019. I started a firm called Turnbull Holcomb, which is where I was before I came to Tor Herman, and kind of had flushed most of the diacetyl story out of my head. It was probably 60% of my work when I was at Weinberg Wheeler the last 5 or 6 years. And about 3 or 4 years ago, my good friend, who's now my trial partner, Jake Plattenberger, and I'll just throw this disclaimer out there. Jake is the most talented trial lawyer I've ever worked with and should be like a household name at this point. So I just want to throw that out there. He's
Jake Plattenberger.
Jake Plattenberger. He's in Chicago. He's one of my best friends. He's a lot of the reason that I jumped over to Tor Herman Law. But I got to know him when I was a defense lawyer, him and Tor Herman. in these diacetyl cases. Well, about 3 years into my plans practice, he calls me in like mid-June and says, hey, do you want to come try a diacetyl case with me in Warren County, Ohio? Well, I Google Warren County, Ohio, and it's literally the most Republican county in the United States. I'm like, well,
why does that matter as a trial attorney?
So it doesn't matter as much now, and it probably didn't matter that much then. But when I was coming up as a defense lawyer, one of the best predictors of whether somebody was going to be a plaintiff-oriented juror or a defense-oriented juror was their political affiliation. Republicans would generally be defense, and Democrats would be obviously plaintiff or worker, oriented. That has really changed, and I've actually done surveys on it with jury consultants to try to figure it out. Nowadays, it doesn't really matter as much. If you find the right Republican jury, because we're in the era of Trump and nationalism and that type of thing, there's some places that are very rural, very conservative, very Southern Baptist Christian, all of that. But if you have the right case, they will absolutely hammer the defendant. And but still, I would, if I had my choice, I'm going to downtown Los Angeles instead of Warren County, Ohio.
Yeah.
So we go out there and we try a case, and it's a really tough case. The defense lawyers weren't very good. I'm comfortable saying that at this point. But we had to prove intentional conduct, and we got a $4 million verdict, which was the highest verdict in that county, I think, ever. And it kind of went away again. Like, okay, I'm done with diacetyl, hands clean. So I jump over to Tor Herman with Jake. Jake was already there, but to practice with Jake last year. And we get a call, or Jake gets a call in the summer of 2025 from one of the lawyers who worked up those very first cases out of Jasper, Missouri, where the plant workers had gotten sick. And he said, I have this guy named Roland Esparza in Los Angeles, and I've been litigating his case for almost 5 years. And I want you guys to take a look at it, because his name is Scott Hall. He's a brilliant lung disease. He's probably the best lung disease lawyer I've ever come across. I learned, Billy Gunn, the guy I worked for, I learned a lot from watching him, but he was older by the time I got to him, so there wasn't a lot of hands-on, this is how you do things. I learned a lot of how to do the medicine and the science in these cases from watching Scott and going actually against him in depositions, and him just really kicking my ass. Like, he's brilliant guy, but he's not a trial guy. And so he called us and said, hey, would you take a look at this? It's going to trial in September. I think he called us. Actually, I remember exactly where he called us, because I was on the beach in Sea Island. It was in May of last year.
Great resort.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And so we looked at it. A lot of, we get calls on these cases, and a lot of times the people aren't really all that sick. Maybe they have some decrease in lung function, but when we got the medical records and looked at this guy, it was really clear that he had this actual disease, that he had bronchiolitis obliterans. And I guess I should give a little bit of context on that. Bronchiolitis obliterans, it's a very rare lung disease. It's caused by a few things, but it's a signature disease if you've been exposed to diacetyl. What it does is it targets the smallest airways in your lungs. So your lungs, you have two big branches or one big branch that goes down from your trachea, and then it splits off like a tree, like tree branches. And then at the very end of the tree branches, you have these things that look like grape sacs called alveoli. And that's where the oxygen exchanges with carbon dioxide. This disease happens in the smallest airways right before you get to that, to the grape sacs. And it's an inflammatory disease. So if you think about it, I like to think about it like like one of those cocktail straws. They're very small airways. And just over time, the inflammation keeps going on. Your body's trying to repair it, and it shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, and it develops scar tissue. And that's why they call it obliterans, because at a certain point it becomes fixed, and you can still breathe oxygen in, but when you exchange or try to exchange oxygen to carbon dioxide, you can't breathe out. So it's called an obstructive lung disease. And there's no cure for it. They can give you inhalers. They can give you prednisone to try to clear up your airways and make it look more comfortable for you, but there's no cure. And really, if you get it bad enough, the only thing they can do for you is give you a lung transplant. The problem with a lung transplant is most people only survive 5 to 7 years after a lung transplant.
Wow.
Also, the number one side effect of bronchiolitis obliterans, and after you get the lung transplant, the number one side effect of a lung transplant is the development of bronchiolitis obliterans.
Wow.
So you can get the lung disease, be one of the very few who actually get healthy lungs. Somebody had to die for those lungs.
Right.
And then live 5 years and your quality of life is better. You can spend time with your family and all that, and then you can develop the same disease again, and you're probably going to die from it.
I have a weird question that I don't know if you're going to be able to answer. That you said that's the number one disease that you could get a post lung transplant. That's for people that have the bronchiolitis obliterans, or that's for all lung transplant recipients?
Anybody who gets a lung transplant, the number one way that the body rejects the new lungs is the development of bronchiolitis obliterans.
That's terrifying.
It's horrible. And the way I described it with our pulmonologist during the trial was it's a cruel irony.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be super happy that you're getting a new set of lungs, but you still have a death warrant out against you. It's 5 to 7 years, and you're most, I don't want to say most likely going to get the disease again, but you certainly are at pretty high risk of getting it again.
Wow. Okay, that was heavy.
Yeah, it is. So we get the case and we look at it, and it's kind of a crazy thing. So Roland Esparza, who's a wonderful guy, I really got to know him really well because I handled the settlement negotiations and went through 2 mediations with him before we went into the trial. But he was kind of like a man's man. Like he's the type of man that, like, I wish I was like. Like I don't do anything cool. I practice law. I play golf every once in a while. I'm not a cool guy. But Roland was an ex-Army guy. He served overseas in like Honduras and Egypt. He came back and he became like a bodybuilder. He owned his own nutrition store. And he was I messed the degrees up, but like a 3rd or 4th degree brown belt, which is, my understanding, is very high. It's like right before you get to black belt in jiu-jitsu. Shot guns, worked on his own motorcycles. He was a stud, like an absolute stud. You see the pictures of this guy, and it's like, he's a man. Yeah. He's the man's man.
Yeah.
But the medical records that we saw told a completely different story. He had, about 15 to 20% lung function left, which means if he catches a cold, if he gets COVID, he could very well die. He's on 24-hour supplemental oxygen, so he's basically chained to an oxygen tank at all times of the day. And he got really, in a weird way, he got very lucky. So he got very sick all of a sudden, and he went to these good doctors. I mean, at Torrance Memorial Hospital there in Torrance, part of Los Angeles. And they diagnosed him with COPD. But the problem is nobody could figure out why he was sick because he was so healthy. He was running like 8 miles a day. I mean, like I said, this guy was a stud. And they kind of got to the end of their treatment and were like, I don't know why he's sick, and he's getting worse. And so they sent him to the University of Southern California and to a doctor named Dr. Chang, who I now call Dr. House. So Dr. Chang is a brilliant doctor, probably one of the best treating lung doctors, pulmonologists I've ever seen.
You said UCLA?
USC.
USC.
Yeah, Southern Cal. Yeah, she's a lung doctor there. It's a tertiary center, which means if they can't figure out what's wrong with you or they can't treat you somewhere else, they send you there kind of as a last resort. So she gets his medical records, goes through it. She starts doing her literature search, and she sees that this lung disease, well, she sees that he most likely has popcorn lung, and it's not COPD, based upon all the tests, which became a big part of the trial, whether you had COPD or bronchiolitis obliterans. And then she tries to figure out the cause. So she does a literature search and reaches out to colleagues like the top thoracic radiologist at USC, who's probably one of the top 10 radiologists in the country, in the world. And they figure out that he has bronchiolitis obliterans. And then she finds this link in the medical literature between diacetyl and butter flavoring exposure, which sounds weird because diacetyl is in butter flavoring, and this particular disease. So Roland goes into her office. I can't remember the date, and I don't want to say something wrong because I know the defense is probably listening, and they had a statute of limitations defense. So I don't want to give the wrong date off the top of my head, but you lost that one. So she goes into him, and she says, "Do you eat a lot of microwave popcorn?" Because she had read about Wayne Watson, the guy I was telling you about earlier. And he's like, "No."
I'm sorry to interrupt the
Sure.
story. This is on because I'm thinking on a completely different side, just about how there's really incredible people in every industry and people that are just pushing papers. Dr. Chang did this. She took this proactive step and went out and researched the medical literature on her own to start connecting these dots.
Nobody asked her to. It did her no benefit. She is an angel of a woman, of a doctor, saved Roland's life. He would not be here today without her. I can't say
That's
enough
incredible
about her. She's the best treating lung doctor I've ever seen, and the defense attacked her during trial. So she asked him about microwave popcorn. He goes back. He's like, "No, I didn't do any of that." So he goes back and he does his own research and sees that back in 2008, 2009, ConAgra had put out a press release that, hey, we're taking diacetyl out of PAM, which was weird because there maybe been one report of somebody getting sick from it, but not a lot. And he goes back into her and says, "Hey, listen, I've been using PAM butter spray for 30 years as part of my bodybuilding routine. So I'm he was eating 12 to 15 eggs per day for 25 years. And in fact, he used to train other people, and that was part of the training plan that he would give to people is, hey, eat 7 eggs in the morning with ground beef on the side and stuff like that. And so he's spraying this PAM spray, every day in a confined environment in his kitchen, not using ventilation. And he asks, could this be linked up? She does some more research, and she comes to the conclusion that the most likely cause of his lung disease is this PAM butter spray. And she went through every test. She put him through every test that you could ever go through multiple times and tried to figure out any other cause. And the only one that she could come up with was PAM butter spray.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, knowing that the guy was really sick, we had a big corporate defendant, ConAgra, who used to be my co-defendant in a lot of these cases, and that we had a good venue in downtown Los Angeles, and at the Stanley Moss Courthouse. We decided to get back into the diacetyl fight.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this is, you said he was in Torrance Hospital. Mr. Esparza was in an apartment in Southern California?
I'm trying to remember where he lived then. He lives now in a house kind of south central Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah, but he had, it's just it's just a commercial, not commercial, a residential kitchen. He didn't use any ventilation.
Right. Well, that's exactly what I'm thinking. I went to school, law school in Pepperdine, but I lived on the west side, and every apartment from Santa Monica all the way, if you come inland to you can go as far as Ontario, really. It's not like in Atlanta, when I was in Athens at UGA, there was in HVAC units with air conditioning. If anything, you have like a window unit AC in Santa Monica, for example, but that's few and far between too. Those apartments have been built years ago. So you're talking about a small footprint of a kitchen.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think people who live on the East Coast or in the Midwest probably don't grasp just how, and I love California. It's a wonderful place, but the property stuff is just the cost of housing is insane. And so the houses are much smaller, the kitchens are much smaller, so you don't have the big, hoods over over the stove like you would out here.
Yeah. That's incredible. Wow. Again, I want to stop and recognize that. What was Dr. Chang's first name?
I'm going to butcher it because it's Chinese. It's like Xiang Fei, I think, but I just called her Dr. Chang.
Dr. Chang.
I actually called her Dr. House because I thought she lined up with that TV show.
That really stuck out. That fact stuck out to me because there are so many. I myself, personally, just as a patient, like trying to receive healthcare, I'm dismissed so often, and not in a rude way. It's just nobody really goes out of their way to try and figure out what's wrong. Or you can have the same symptom for months and maybe even years until you find a physician that is really that dedicated to what it is that their purpose is to in this particular case was to either diagnose or to heal, or in an attempt to heal, at least diagnose. So Dr. Chang, thank you so much.
She's an amazing woman.
That's incredible.
Yeah, amazing doctor.
You guys won against ConAgra.
We did win. Yeah, it was. So the trial ended up getting moved to January. It was supposed to be last September. The defense lawyer, the main defense lawyer for ConAgra, who's a guy I've traveled the country with when I was a defense lawyer, I know him fairly well, came down with an illness, a serious illness, and we delayed the trial until January, and they kind of got a new trial team up and running. We mediated the case a couple times in late December, and I don't like mediation. I've actually mediated a few times for some friends and stuff, but I'm not a huge fan of mediation. I feel like I can value the cases myself, and I don't need somebody else to try to tell me what the value is. But I agreed to it here under certain conditions. We had, some pretty strict conditions. And we were gaslighted the whole time during mediation. Basically, I was told to my face on Zoom with my client there that my demand was like arbitrary and wasn't tethered to any reality whatsoever, which is funny because this mediator had no clue what she was talking about.
Oh, this was from the mediator? This
was from the mediator.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, like December 30th. Our trial started January 5th. So we start trial. We're supposed to start January 5th. We end up going, I think we went 5 weeks of trial, and I was out there 6 weeks. People who have litigated or tried cases in California will know they have a lot of dark days. They because the traffic's so bad, you don't really start till later in the day, and you end really early. It's a union shop, which I support unions, but because of the union contract, is my understanding, is why it's the case. There's an hour and a half break for lunch every day, so you don't get a lot of time actually in the courtroom. Mm-hmm. And so this trial went on 5 weeks. We were going up against Norton Rose Fulbright, which is a very large corporate firm. The local people here in Atlanta, it's like King and Spalding or Alston and Bird. So yeah, it was a 5-week trial, and we end up with a $25 million verdict. Yeah.
You ended up with a $25 million verdict on behalf of Roland Esparza after this was a 5-year battle?
Over 5 years.
Over 5 years.
Yeah.
And this is involving a plaintiff that is, what's the clinical description?
He had end-stage lung disease.
And on the verge of, if he doesn't receive a lung transplant,
he's going to die.
His rate of survival is very, very low.
No, I mean, it's even stronger than that. I was worried that he was going to die during trial.
During trial.
During trial. So, we're in opening statement. Jake was doing opening statement. We kind of have, if he brings the case in, then, he usually does void iron opening. If I bring it in, it's the opposite. So we kind of have a system worked out. So this is a case that, Jake generated. And during opening statement, I'm sitting next to Roland, and he's breathing so heavy. And, he's hooked up to his oxygen tank. And I'm having to look over at him every once in a while and kind of put my hand on his leg and on his knee and say, like, hey, man, like, are you okay? Very, very, very sick. He's not in a wheelchair, but we ended up putting him in a wheelchair. And it's not because of, like, plaintiff lawyer tricks to try to make him, believe me, this guy's not malingering, and we weren't trying to make him look like that. It was just too hard for him to walk from the entry of the courthouse to the courtroom. He would get there and be completely winded and done. I mean, just completely done. And so we didn't make him come to court every day. Usually he could come in for like half a day, and then he'd need to take a day and a half off, something like that. So he was so bad off probably midway through the trial that I personally had major concerns that we needed to get him on the stand to testify because he may pass away during the trial.
He is that sick and been battling this long. And I'm assuming this was not, I don't know what the terminology is, but it's not the first glance of this disease. There have been other cases. Obviously, we've had it with workers, and then there was the case of consumers prior.
Correct.
So it's not, what do they call it? Like first glance?
A bellwether, it was not.
It's not a bellwether case.
No. Well, it was a bellwether as it related to PAM butter spray. This was the first PAM butter spray case ever, which was actually a thing that gave me, not so much Jake, I had some skepticism of the case because it was PAM butter spray. And the reason is everybody who is listening to this podcast, and I'm sure everybody in this office either has it in their kitchen right now or had it growing up. Everybody's used PAM butter spray, and there's not an epidemic of lung disease, right, that we know about. So, we had won, when I was on the defense, we won our consumer case in an hour and 15 minutes after we got the shit kicked out of us for 2 weeks. And when I talked to the jurors, this was back in 2014, it had been the worst trial experience of my life. I have never gotten beaten every day so badly. But when I talked to the jurors afterwards, they were laughing. They were like, we never believed this for a second. You were always good.
Wow.
And so there was this weirdness factor to it, right? Like, this guy's using PAM that much. It's PAM butter spray. Everybody uses PAM butter spray. My aunt uses it. She works in a bakery. She's not sick.
Yeah.
So that's one of the proudest parts of it to me. The number's fine, and the number will take care of Roland and all of that. But it's the fact that it was the first PAM case. Now, if you actually look at the science of diacetyl and diacetyl exposure, it makes a lot of sense. So not to go on too much of a science thing, I'll try to keep it short, but diacetyl, all of the medical literature, all of the studies that they did in the plants back in the 2000s show that it's particularly dangerous when it's in an aerosol form and when it's heated. So when it's in PAM butter spray, it's made already in a aerosol spray. It vaporizes at like 88 degrees Fahrenheit or something, like very low. That's actually very low for a chemical. And you're meant to spray it onto a hot surface, your pan, that if you're on medium heat, it's about 450 degrees. It can get into the 700 degrees. So you're spraying it onto a hot surface in a form that's already more dangerous with no ventilation and about, I think we did measurements and stuff, I think it's about 2.5, 3 feet below your breathing zone. So it's actually the perfect vehicle to cause a lung disease. And just because there's not a lot of other verdicts out there about PAM butter spray causing this lung disease doesn't mean that a lot of people haven't gotten sick.
Yeah.
This disease is a really difficult one to actually diagnose. It's usually misdiagnosed as COPD, like Roland was initially. So God knows how many people through the last 30 years have actually gotten this disease or a similar disease like asthma or some other obstructive lung disease using PAM butter spray, but didn't know it.
Well, I will say, this is going to sound like a setup, but Jamie's mother about 3 years ago was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Never smoked a day in her life, walks every day, super healthy. So when you say, we don't have this epidemic, I think a lot of it may not be an epidemic, but I think there are probably a lot of cases that have been either misdiagnosed or undiagnosed.
I don't think there's any doubt.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt.
That's incredible. Alan, I am thankful for you. I'm thankful that the universe brought you from the dark side to fight for the people. Our selfish plug, our tagline is, we take care of you. We take care of the community. Podcast is about empowering just the consumers. I view the world right now very much. There's a lot of division, but I'm convinced that the world is only amongst right now the battle of haves and have-nots. And there's a bunch of people that believe mistakenly that they're part of the haves, and they're not. They're actually the have-nots. And when I look at you, I think that you fight for the have-nots. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, that means a lot. And my trial partner, Jake, he said it, and we kind of all know it on this side, but especially doing the type of work I do and seeing how much corruption is in the FDA, and I do a lot of automotive product liability, so NHTSA and all these government organizations. When you see those internal documents and how the game is played at that level, I'm not just like fluffing ourselves up, but this is true of car accident lawyers. It's all plaintiff lawyers, in my opinion. We are the only thing left that is protecting the everyday American. And if it wasn't for us manning the gate, these corporations would run even more wild than they already are, and take more advantage of us. And so it's hard work, and it can be backbreaking work, mentally, physically, emotionally, for every type of trial lawyer. But what you should know is that what you do is really important, and there's nobody else looking out for these people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Usually I turn it over for a closing thought, but I think you just gave it to us.
I can't say it any better than that.
That was beautifully said. Alan, thank you so much for your time. I definitely want to have you back on. Hopefully, I know you're going through an appeals process. Maybe we can have you on post-appeal, and we can get through 100% of the details. Well,
it's a 7-minute drive, so I guess I can bring myself to come over here.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Alan, thank you again so much. You guys listening, Mom especially, I hope you really enjoyed it. I know for a fact you're about to come over and take over my cupboards and remove any sprays, anything in an aerosol can. My mom is very organic in that way.
Love it.
Love you, Mom. Thank you for listening. Everyone else, I appreciate your time. Hope you got something out of it. If you're not going to subscribe, I won't ask you too hard, but at least drop me a like, comment, share the videos. It would mean a lot to me. Thank you, everybody. Take care.